Welcome to Book Design in the Wild, where I talk about real book design in different genres and sizes and for different audiences so that you can make better design decisions when you are designing books. Today I'm going to talk about The Phlebotomist by Chris Panatier. It's a dystopian novel that obviously has a lot to do with blood. Probably the first thing you're going to notice is that it is aggressively pink. You probably can't even tell how pink this is because you're looking at it on a computer screen instead of in person, and I think this is very much a print friendly pink. But this is the pinkest pink that ever pinked. If you saw this on a bookshelf, it's really going to jump out at you. A table display, this pink is going to really catch your eye. Now this sort of bright pink color, or bright color for real, isn't going to work for every type of book, but when it is a good choice for your book, it's a really good choice because it really makes it stand out. And this really bright color pairs well with the simple line drawings. I mean, well, this is a fairly in-depth line drawing with lots of texturing on it, but it's just a line drawing. It's not like a full oil painting or anything like that. If you're doing a full oil painting, then pairing it with this bright of a pink might take away from the art. But in this, they pair well together. It works really nicely. So on the cover, we've got 3 fonts in play. We've got the stuff we've got for the phlebotomist, for the author's name, and for this blurb up here in the corner. Now, I don't have the best eye for identifying every font in existence, so I use an app called What the Font to help me identify fonts, and it's connected to the myfonts.com library, and it didn't find these 2 fonts. But a couple of things to be aware of with them is they mirror some hand-drawn things. They've got brush stroke elements here in the phlebotomist font, and then these kind of star little ornaments on each letter in Chris Panatier's name. So thing to take away from this is that they pair well with the ink drawing, but also the phlebotomist is a really long word. So it's hard to fit a word this long on a narrow cover. So they've used a tall condensed font, so those letters are nice and narrow, so they can fit the whole word on there while still having it big enough to be able to read. This font up here is freight text, and we've got the italic and probably a medium weight. It might be a little lighter, but just given that there's probably a little bit of ink bleed from the pink, it's probably a medium weight. So those are the things we've got going on in this cover. Oh, and trim size. So this book is well within normal trade paperback size. It's 5 1/4 inches across, and it's 8 7/16 of an inch tall. So it's a pretty standard size. It's within the realm of what looks pretty normal. Here on the spine, the phlebotomist font gets repeated, as does the Chris Panatier font. This spine is a little less than an inch wide. The book is around like 340, 350 pages. So they get this full inch spine. If you have a much shorter book and you want a lot of text on your spine, it's going to be harder. They also have another line drawing that has the same sort of style as the heart and the flowers on front, but it's a syringe because the main character is a phlebotomist. And then we have the angry robot logo here because the angry robot is the publisher. So here on the back, we've got that aggressive pink again, and we have kind of faded pieces of that image on the front that get repeated back here. If you don't need a full wraparound cover, this can be a good way to get your front cover and your back cover to look really connected. You take pieces of the imagery from the front and repeat them on the back in kind of a muted, understated kind of way. So that's what they've done here. And here we've got 2 fonts. We've got a sans serif up here and a serif down here. These are more blurbs, so they're formatted the same as the blurb up here. They're just a little wider, so they take up more space. So this sans serif up here is actually Freight Sans. So it's made by the same people who do Freight, and they're meant to look good together. So if you know you're going to need both a sans serif and a serif font, looking for some sort of paired font family where there's both a sans and a serif version of it is a really good option. So they've used kind of a bold or a medium, that's probably bold. They've used a heavier weight for this first introductory tagline to kind of grab your eye, put some more contrast on it. And then once they have your attention, they switch to a text weight that is easier to read at length. So it's thinner so that you can read more easily. One thing to notice here is that everything is center aligned. With most back covers, you'll either see a center alignment or a left alignment, and both have their pros and cons. With this center alignment, it looks really nice and balanced and even. It looks very visually appealing. It is a little harder to read because both edges are ragged. It can be hard to jump from line to line, but where these are all really short paragraphs and there isn't going to be a lot of line jumping and their readers aren't reading this at length, it normally isn't too big of a problem to have this center alignment on the back cover. And then down here, again, where Angry Robot has their silly genre tags that they have a lot, it's again in this same serif font, just gets repeated down there. So let's break open the interior. So some books they have some blurbs here in the front and then just one title page. They don't have a half title and then a full title. They just have the full title. And some books will tell you what font they're set in. You can see here this one is set in Meridian. But again, I was able to look this up on using the My Fonts, What the Font app, and it found Meridian as well. So even if they hadn't said that, I would have been able to find it. But I love it when books tell you so you don't have to hunt it down. So in here, you can see we've got a fairly generous size and some nice line spacing. One thing you can do to actually measure these instead of just guessing is I have this E-scale ruler. And it also has this leading measurement here. So you just have to find an E on a page. Oh dear. I found one before, I promise, because I measured it. Oh, there's an E. So you just line up the E until you find one that is the right size. It's that one, it's the 10-point E. So this is set in Meridian 10-point, and the leading, I measured it, it's between 14 and 15. It's probably around 14¼ points of leading, which is a pretty nice, generous leading. This font looks like it reads a little bigger, so it's a very inviting font size and leading. This chapter start is in 18-point and all caps, so it creates some nice contrast. You've got a lot of space around it, and it starts about 1/3 of the way down the page, which creates a nice, like, hello, I'm a new chapter going on. I love how the book has all these like medical terms and then definitions, and it uses those as epigraphs, which is a lot of fun. But because they're not actual quotes, they set them full width, which epigraphs aren't normally set that wide. They're normally a bit narrower. But where these are just words and definitions instead of quotes from other people, then it looks kind of nice to just have it full width there. So again, this is a 5¼ page and an 8 7/16 inch height, width and height. And once you have your page size, and if you know kind of what you want on your font size and leading, it's important to figure out what your margins are going to be. Sometimes you'll figure out your margins first and then figure out your text size to fit within those margins. But I know people who do it the other way too. So this exterior margin, I'm going to measure it in picas. Picas are a print design specific measurement. It's about 3 picas, which 3 picas is 1/2 inch. So you've got a 1/2 inch margin here, much smaller than your 1 inch margins that you use in Word, obviously. And this bottom margin, you can see it's a lot wider than this. Okay, not a lot, but it's wider in part because they need to fit this page number when they do the chapter break down here. So this is 3½ picas, 3 picas, 6 points. So it's a little more than 1/2 inch. This top margin is about 4. It depends on if you're measuring from the top of the letters or the top of the text box. I can only measure from the top of the letters because I can't see their electronic files. So it's 4 picas here on the top, which gives more room for this running head that they have going through everything. And the interior margin. So this is probably the thing I like least about this book. I think that interior margin is actually pretty tight. I think too many words are getting sucked up in there, but the page length that they have is it's kind of a sweet spot for a lot of science fiction. So if that was the choice they had to make that page length, I mean, it's understandable. I just don't like it. I especially don't like bending spines. Like, I'm already sad that I've bent this cover this much. So this interior margin is 3 picas, just like this exterior margin here. So, yeah, we've got 3, 3.5, 4, yeah, and then another 3 in there. So if I were to change anything about this design, it would probably be to give that margin just a little more space, because I think it's a little cramped. But even though that's cramped, again, this font size and the leading is really inviting. So I think it's something you can get away with when you have such an inviting setup for these. Other things that we have going on in here, like I said, we drop the running head on the chapter break. You normally don't have anything up here. So they drop the page number to the bottom. Some books will just not have a page number at a chapter break. But if they do have a page number, it normally gets dropped to the bottom in the center. On the running pages, we have the title of the book over here and the author over here. Some books do it the opposite way with author name over here and book over here, but it doesn't really matter, just so long as it's the same throughout the entire book. And we have the page numbers. It looks like we have some varying weights here, where this one is heavier than that one and this text is heavier than that. And I'm not sure I like that, but I'm not sure that I don't like it either. So it's just something interesting that is going on. And then another important thing for fiction is to make sure that you understand your scene breaks. And so each scene break here, some books just do 1 line space. This book actually has 2 lines worth of space in between each scene. So each line is 14 points. That was our leading, was 14 points. So there's 28 points of space between the end of the previous scene and the start of this next one. And you'll see that this line isn't indented at all because it's the start of a new scene that happens at the start of chapters 2. You typically don't indent that paragraph. This indent is just 1 pica, which again, if you're coming from formatting manuscripts, if you're self-publishing and this is the first time that you've set something up for a print book rather than a manuscript, you might default to a 1/2 inch indent, which is just insanely big. It's so big. It would be looking at around here on the indent, and that's just a really, really deep indent for fiction. So around a pica is a lot closer to what you're going to want. So that's it. That kind of covers our chapter breaks, our epigraphs, our scene breaks. They have a few like broadcasts that are formatted in a serif font and have a little extra spacing around them. Those function a lot like block quotes. But the last interesting thing I want to show you here is the way that they designed this excerpt at the back. So you've probably seen where there will be a first chapter excerpt for, you know, the author's next book, which I don't think Chris Panatier has another book in the pipeline right now, is probably why they did this. But they have actually another author's work, Jay Posey. It's called 3, so, you know, apocalyptic. It's giving you something else that is in a similar vein, similar genre. They've set off these sample pages with this black outline to make sure you know it's not a part of Chris Panatier's work. And this is something that Angry Robot does really well, is cross-promoting their entire line of books. Some publishers that have bigger lists don't do this quite as much, but where Angry Robot is it's smaller and it's more focused, they do an excellent job of cross-promoting their entire list to their readers, and they managed to build some decent credibility as curators of fiction for certain readers. So that might be something you want to do if you're cross-promoting with like other authors that you are similar to or like to work with, maybe just put cross-promotional chapters in there. But I do like that they very distinctly show that this is not the same as Chris Panatier's work. So that's The Phlebotomist by Chris Panatier. Well, the book design for it anyway. I'm really excited to read this, and I hope you check it out. If you need any help getting your book's reader ready, whether it's through top-notch editing or custom book design, feel free to reach out to me at looseleafep.com, and I would love to help you get your books into readers' hands.